So if you go, I know this is a really bad picture, so you need to go into Canvas, page 4.2. We can see Colin again and Moonen talking about, a list of features of web-based course management systems. So they have this kind of idea, what the tools need to be doing for the learners. Some of you mentioned accessibility, being able to have this asynchronous sharing, synchronous sharing, self-accessing, motivation. Some of you did mention all that. So considering, when we're thinking about selecting tools, there's a list that you could draw on in order to make your own decisions. But also from the perspective of the tutor, I know this came up last time I was here when we were talking about what kind of analytics does Canvas provide as a tutor. And then I said to you guys, if you're curious, you can try Canvas as a tutor rather than as a student, and then you can start, playing with it, see how you can start creating something out of nothing. But it is very intuitive. You just, if you are familiar with the different symbols, of adding content and all those things, it is easier to create. But yeah, so from the tutor's perspective, what kind of tools we're utilizing? Is this a lesson tool? Are you presenting information? Are you putting a video? What is it that you're doing with materials? Do you want interactive materials? Therefore, you might need to think about online learning environments such as Llamas for interactive activities, or more multimedia-like activities as well, which I don't think we have a lot of those in Canvas. Resource tools. So what kind of curriculum management analytics are out there for you to see? Team building. Are you going to be using a lot of group work, collaboration in your course? And these are the things that you need to be able to kind of tick. Are they ticking the boxes? And seeing those potential online learning environments and see if they tick the box for you. Because you might find specific technologies very trendy, very sexy, but if they are not ticking the boxes for what you need based on your students' needs and your learning outcomes, then what's the point of utilizing them? We also have other frameworks of decision making that, again, they're provided by Collis and Moonen. And this is a share reading that you did. You were asked to read this. It's something went wrong, but it's from the Vera journal, the reading by these three colleagues. These people started talking about flexible learning. I don't think I'm going to be able to access it. Okay, there you go. So you didn't have the chance to read this. I think it's a very interesting initial introduction to what flexible learning is. The University of Manchester is talking a lot about flexible learning. So these are some of ideas that University of Manchester is now drawing on as well. And the main argument of flexible learning is to provide students with choices. So they become the essence of how you organize your course. And this has been challenged as well, because it's not as simple as, everything a student will be doing every decision making. There is this old pedagogy that comes along as a tutor, as a course designer, that you do need to consider. I think the recent discussion and debate about this is, okay, maybe a course might be fixed, that this is where the tutors are coming, and from the design angle, they have learning outcomes, they have modules, they have sections, they have things for students to follow, which is different from students just organizing their own learning, which is what these initial ideas from Collis and colleagues started coming from. To, okay, maybe your course is a bit more fixed, but can you incorporate choice when you are, creating activities? Can students decide, on different things, and adding smaller bits and pieces of giving and allowing students to decide on different things? That's also, in a way of incorporating flexibility in your course unit. Where were we? We're here. So yes, that is a book that, that's precisely this, essentially what they're talking about. Is your course providing flexibility? What kind of flexibility? And think about whether this flexibility is offering socialization, social organization as well, content, learning materials, interactivity. Are students able to access the materials anywhere? I mean, it was in the past that during the pandemic, a lot of students were in China and they had to use VPN. Those who struggle to access to a VPN, well, they probably, struggle to access to Canvas. And these are things to think about, in terms of flexibility. So if I go back to my Google slide, here is exactly what we were talking. So basically, flexibility, increasing choices for students in our course units, for them to be able to take ownership of their learning, to be more responsible of the learning. We have discussed in the past that, people who did originally distance learning courses is because they were employees. And so they were working, they were, having other commitments. And part of it, the assumption is that then what they do is because they're really highly motivated, but they're also making choices as to when they read the materials, when they engage into, those asynchronous conversations. The idea is that then they're self-disciplined, they keep a timetable, they organize their learning in order to be able to complete a course in the time that they should, complete it, with all those flexible dimensions that are incorporated. I'm just going to look at the chat because I can see. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Gareth. I don't know if you're still around, but thank you for coming. Yeah, that's the initial point when we start thinking about flexibility, providing students with more choice, and where, what kind of the activities, the assessment provide choice for them to do, to focus on different things, to write about different things that they are interested in, for instance, rather than the teacher saying, here, you're going to talk about this topic in your assignment, that's very fixed. Whereas if I tell you, from the list of things that we have covered or any other topics that are relevant to you in terms of all, I'm going to choose one topic and talk about it, that there's a dimension there of providing flexibility. Now, when we talk about pedagogical approaches, the term pedagogy, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with this, especially if you have done any training in education. Pedagogy is seen in the types of learning activities that we incorporate in class. So it is a way of organizing content materials, activities, scaffolding the learning process of students. Prensky, early in 2000, argued that, the different learning outcomes, we're going back to the idea of learning outcomes, are best learned through particular types of activities. And it provides a list of different ways in which people learn. So if I go back to the bigger list in Canvas, because this is something I'm just basically, copying from Canvas. So the suggestion is that we learn through imitation, when we receive feedback, when we do things, doing, utilizing your kinesthetic abilities, skills, playing, through association, drill, memory, asking questions, answering questions, reviewing things, analyzing things, coaching. So if you're a person that likes to explain things to other people, you're reaffirming the learning. I remember a lot that I enjoyed a lot, you know, after we had a class in mathematics or English or Spanish, or some students were really scared of asking questions to the tutor, and they will always come to me and ask me, "Do you understand this bit?" And I would say, "Oh yeah." I was kind of rehearsing my own learning, and I remember learning even more by explaining. So we do learn a lot about ourselves and the learning process when we engage in coaching or tutoring. Those of you who might, worked as tutors before, you probably found yourself learning a lot because you also engage with students, and whatever they think about things, and you're like, oh, I never thought about this before. So observation is another thing. We know this from scientific methods: observation, experimentation, analysis. Challenging, that's the idea of asking questions, solving problems. Yeah, so you can see in the list as well all the things that are more, going into deep in theory and reading, making connections as well, I would say. So basically, pedagogy and the different approaches provide an understanding of how you can organize your teaching in a way that promotes learning. And that learning could be linked to these different ways, to this list of different ways in which we learn. For example, I'll give you some examples. Well, before I'll give you the examples. One thing to say is that, how do I know which pedagogy or pedagogical approach I should choose for my course design? How do I know? Well, what's informing your decision, and this is something we've seen before, you've seen this with Peter, with me in the last 2 weeks, is one of the things is your beliefs, how you understand teaching and learning, what's your beliefs about technology and the use of technology in the classroom. What is your knowledge about, the different pedagogical approaches as well? Because the idea of introducing some of these pedagogical approaches is that then, as I said before, you go on and read more about them, because it's important to be familiar with them. Your own learning style, how do you learn, is going to inform how you, design those different activities that you want your students to engage with. So your own learning style is part of the equation, but also your students' learning styles and needs, the institutional factors as well that are out there. So again, you might be given flexibility in the institution by saying, yeah, you choose your own pedagogy, but some institutions, they tell you exactly how you should be teaching. So you are very limited into, what you can do. Whether this type of learning is going to be face-to-face, is it hybrid, is it completely fully online, is it blended? So yes, all of these factors will inform your decision making. And this is, again, just to revisit the figure that Peter and myself showed you in the past few days. It's always about having an understanding that these are factors that will influence that decision making. So what are the pedagogies that we can talk about? And this is very tiny for you to see, but there's a link which you can access. You click in that link, you'll see this figure, a bit bigger for you. So we have the constructivist approach, we have the collaborative approach, integrative approach, reflective approach, inquiry-based learning. All of these pedagogical approaches are very linked to online learning. but also into face-to-face. They could be implemented in face-to-face learning and blended as well, blended learning. So the idea of the constructivist approach is that students are allowed to be present in the process of developing knowledge. So students' experiences, students' ideas and understandings of the different topics that are going to be explained are important in creating knowledge. So we get into the co-construction of knowledge. It's not just about presenting information, it's about asking students about their experiences, what they know, how they understand the topics, for them to make those connections between, let's say, theory and experience, and build on that knowledge that they have. Collaboration, as the word says it all, is about students interacting, working together, solving problems, developing strategies, creating products, creating or completing tasks together to learn from each other. The integrative pedagogical approach is all about students. The students are given a learning environment that helps them connect, what they are learning in one unit, but also across different units. So for instance, what you learn in online, teaching and learning online, you might have already learned in blended learning, and you are extending your knowledge, and you can see that, how transactionally these courses correlate to one another. But you're also learning other things as well as part of the curriculum. The reflective approach, which is one approach that we use in this unit, is all about asking students to evaluate themselves and their previous experiences. So if you remember, what we do a lot, and there's either group tasks or individual tasks where you're presented with information, a video or something, then you are asked to reflect about your own learning. And that's a way of evaluating your experiences of online learners, or being experiences of teaching online, and see where you are, where you were in the past, where you are now after learning about the theory that we explore. And in a way, you're evaluating yourself and your own development. So reflection is all about students, people's own professional academic development. And then we have inquiry-based learning, which is pretty much based on, there's a method where students are expected, educators are expected not just to answer questions, but the students are expected to create questions and answer their own questions. So it is, again, a process of getting students involved in the co-construction of ideas. This connects quite well with the idea of, the constructivist approach, asking questions and responding to these questions, but involving the students in the response of those questions. It's not just coming from the tutor. There are more and more pedagogical approaches. There's a blended learning approach. There's the computational thinking. There's a link there for, that gives you more details of these different approaches. Gamification, some of you may have heard about this, which is all about, incorporating, the learning is transforming to a game. All the sequence of a lesson, for instance, of a module in each of the courses it's a game, and students are expected to, a game-based learning. So they're expected to engage in that game, and then coming out from that experience, having learned different things and being able to achieve those learning outcomes. So it's a lot about, play. There's a lot of play in there. So blended learning, those of you who have done that course of blended learning as well know that this is, all about active content, interaction, flipped classroom. So students are given a lot of responsibilities as well, and coming and discussing materials and all. Experiential learning, that's another approach. So these units, and if you remember in week 1, when I explained to you what kind of pedagogical approaches we used in teaching and learning online, one of them was experiential learning, and the other one was reflective approach. So in the experiential learning, as part of this course unit, is that you are engaging, you're actually doing an online course, learning about online course with the expectation that you're putting into practice the theory. Whether you do it or not, it will benefit you or not, but you take the decisions yourself. So these are pretty much individual decisions that you take for your own benefit. And as we've seen, some students do take very, very seriously what they learn. Some other students, no, they don't. In this regard, one of the things to mention is that there is formative assessment in this unit as well. And somebody asked me last week about formative assessment. So what kind of formative assessment, this was in a different unit, do we provide? And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to mention that as part of, when we talk about experiential learning. So in experiential learning, there's a lot of the ideas is that you're provided with formative and also summative assessment. So for example, in this unit, you write 2 assignments, part 1, part 2, and you receive feedback. You receive a mark, that's summative assessment. You receive a mark in the 2 parts of this assignment. You received summative feedback, but you will also receive formative feedback when we are going to tell you how we, evaluated in a way your engagement through Canvas, in Zoom. We do take, our observations. We know who participates, who's not participating in the tasks, and so on and so forth. And we will tell you this, and that's part of your formative assessment, which will go into the feedback in Turnitin. Embodied learning, that's another. Embodied learning is more about, engaging students in creativity activities, arts-based learning. Students are invited to, create paintings, talk about the paintings, go away and take pictures, come back and, share those materials and share their own reflections on why they took a picture, how does the picture connect to specific learning content, and so on and so forth. And multi-critical literacies, which is this is something you've already explored in a video that we provided a couple of weeks ago as well. So it's about that linguistic diversity and questioning. It's all about this engaging in discussions and so on and so forth. Before we go into group work, I'm going to give a 5-minute break. We're going to get into the what's it called? Voice thread. Sorry, I lost completely track of time. But we will go into a break. And I can see somebody's asking a question and there's a comment in the chat box. How do we decide among so many choices? Interesting. Do you want to ask another question or shall I address your question?
Yeah, it's this one actually.
Okay.
Because I see that as a teacher, you have so many choices. So when you make a course, so how to decide which one would be the best and how you do this, like how you inform your decision?
Yeah. So remember about the idea of really starting with your learning outcomes. So the learning outcomes are going to guide you through what do you really need to do to be able to achieve those learning outcomes. So it's not just one learning outcome, as some people start creating a course unit and having 6 learning outcomes. And one learning outcome could be emphasizing, play or game. And then you think, well, some of the approaches of, gamification could help here. And then you could think about, gamification. Another learning outcome could emphasize, that students need to experience different tools, or they need to experience things and also reflect on them. And then you're thinking, oh, reflection and experiential learning. But it really starts with the learning outcomes, and what it is that you want your students to be able to achieve at the end of the course. And from those general outcomes, you then can start thinking about potential pedagogies. The more you read about these pedagogies, you might see some overlaps. So for instance, let's go back to one. one slide, you may see then that experiential learning might overlap with the reflection or the reflective approach, or that the constructivist approach overlaps with the inquiry-based. But you want to emphasize the inquiry-based because you really want your students to be more engaged in them. Instead of providing topics, then the exploration is based on the topics they provide for you in your unit. So yeah, but it does have to start with the learning outcomes, and they will inform what kind of pedagogies you could adapt and incorporate. You could combine as well. You don't have to just choose one. You could combine different pedagogies as long as they are fit for purpose. So you're using them purposefully because they link back to your learning outcomes. And obviously, you do need to consider other factors which you mentioned, institution, accessibility of, the technology and all that. So it is not easy. You're probably thinking, this is too much.
Yes, definitely. And I'm thinking that, yeah, I mean DTC teachers are with a background in education. What if you are coming totally from different background? For example, you're a dentist and you have to teach students a course. How you gonna make these decisions? Do you have this knowledge and skills in course making?
And for that, somebody trying to get and create an online course, people who really don't know much about education, they will find the support. For instance, at the university, there are people who never probably did a course in education. That's why we have our e-learning technologists. So we go to them and say, I need in my Blackboard course these activities, and they will develop those for them. So you find that support within your institution, especially, I know that this exists at the University of Manchester because we have access to the e-learning technologists if we want. And they help us a lot with Canvas courses, with questions, creating videos, a podcast. So they're more practical in that sense, but you still need to do some thinking. And then you could have a consultation with somebody that knows more, or maybe you're not going to be a solo course lead. You might be co-teaching with somebody who has that experience. And then we go back to the idea of collaboration, and find people who have the expertise. But the idea is that then if you really have no knowledge, either you go by yourself and do a training, or find the resources within your institution to be able to help. Because you may have a really good idea, but if you really don't have the knowledge, you will struggle to find ways in which you could develop that course that you want. It is not easy. But a lot of students just see the materials in Canvas, they don't know, or in Blackboard, and they don't know the amount of thinking that teachers went through. They just see the assignment is this, but they don't know that they spend a fair amount of hours thinking about what kind of assessment connects to the learning outcomes and will help students to achieve the learning outcomes, and connects to the different things that we've seen in class throughout the year, and also connects with other units, because we need to communicate with other units. Is planning is a lot. It's a lot of time, takes a lot of resources, and that's another rationale why we do that second part in groups and not leave you by yourself. Imagine you have to do all these by yourself, you will panic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I reflect on my lectures back in my country, they all work alone. They don't get actually we don't have tutors together or cooperating in one course, which is very amazing. Like you support each other, and it's very good for brainstorming, coming to ideas and making decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm tempted how are we feeling? Do we need a break? I need some reactions.
Let's continue. It's just 5 minutes.
Okay, some people. Okay, 5 minutes of a break. Did you say, Ulka? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I mean, I would say, okay, I'm fine to continue.
How about you, Kayan? Because these are the two people I always see on screen. How about you, Kayan? Are you fit to continue or you want a break? Be honest.
Mhm.
Break or no break?
I don't. I'm fine with both.
Okay, you're flexible. How about the other ones?
Mhm.
Can you put in the chat box? Yes, continue, no continue, break? Because we have 50-50. I might just continue because we do have somebody coming in. Let's see. Continue. Okay, continue. Okay, let's just go. Let's carry on then. Good. Thank you for sharing. So the next bit is we're gonna go into groups. But I'm aware that not all study group members are here. Let's have a go with this activity in VoiceThread. It's not going to be 15 minutes. It's going to be about, I said 12 minutes. But it could be an initial interaction with VoiceThread, and then you could decide whether you continue this interaction outside the class. You could say who's going to, or decide who's going to do the post, or if everybody in the group is going to do a post. I'm going to share this bit. Sorry. So basically, you click on the screen, this screen here that says VoiceThread. Whoever is creating the, sorry. Whoever is doing the post, if it's only one person or everybody's doing this, you need to be logged into your VoiceThread account. If you didn't create one, you may want to leave this to somebody who has that account and has previously created it. Now, if you want to see this in open, fully open, you could just click on that arrow there, here, and then it'll open another window. Click again, always so it looks like this. VoiceThread sometimes needs a bit of a you fiddling around so that it kind of reacts. But the idea is that then you think about your experiences of using virtual learning environments and tell us whether you felt at home and why. So you have other questions to think about, but it's very simple. Think about your experience using any online environment and whether you enjoyed it or it was difficult and why. I'll send you to your breakout room, this time with your study groups. I'll start recording.